Tell us what inspired you to write Mindjins.
When I was working on the passage of the nuclear deal, Indian Americans played quite a vital role. So I looked around and saw that there were so many Indian CEOs now of major Fortune 500 companies. And I realized that this story really needed to be told.
What was the criteria for you to choose?
There are a lot of wealthy and successful Indians everywhere. My criteria was where Indians have had a transformational impact. Fast forward and Satya Nadella and come, and by then these guys have established that Indians can run companies like Microsoft and Adobe. Vivek Murthy, he was nominated not once but twice. He's a truly unbelievable human being.
I was at a Palo Alto Networks event and I saw what Nikesh has done with Palo Alto.
He is a big risk taker. You have to be able to take risks. You just have to see Chandrika Tandon. Chandrika's life story is absolutely remarkable. She said she made so much money. She says, I am going to leave it all and I'm going to do what I really love, which is Carnatic music. And her first record is nominated for a Grammy. And then this year, she was nominated again and she wins. She won the Grammy this year. So you tell me who's the genius.
This episode is special because we have with us Meenakshi Ahamed. She is a world-renowned journalist who has worked in many organizations which are touching our lives today, like World Bank, NDTV, and she has written 2 phenomenal books. They are more like historical accounts of India and Silicon Valley. Today she's here with us to talk about Indian genius. She has captured the narratives of Indo-Americans who are acting as trailblazers in Silicon Valley. Meenakshi, welcome to the podcast. Meenakshi, this book is making waves. Ever since announcement about it, I've been hearing about it from top CEOs. So tell us what inspired you to write the book, Indian Genius.
Well, my previous book, A Matter of Trust, US-Indo Relations from Truman to Trump, that took me 10 years to write. That book, when I was working on the passage of the nuclear deal, that section, I began to realize that in order to get the nuclear deal passed, the Indian Americans played quite a vital role, small but vital role, in calling their senators, calling their congressmen, and letting them know how important Indo-US relations were and how it was important to them to get this nuclear civil deal done. And they played a pretty critical role in getting that passed. And even Condi Rice, mentions it in her work and her books. And so it is when they found their political voice. So that kind of stuck with me. And 3 years later, when I actually finished the book, I began to look around and saw that there were so many Indian CEOs now of major Fortune 500 companies. And I realized that this story really needed to be told. And so I began to do some research. And then 3.5 years later, the result is this book. Because Indian Americans have had a pretty major impact on the cultural and professional landscape of this country.
Yeah. So, Meenakshi, you went to school at Johns Hopkins. You studied here. And then what made you move to India? And what has helped you keep this bridge alive?
No, actually, I was born and brought up in India. I came here for college. I went back to India. And then I came, as my book will explain, I came here and I've been living in this country. Mm-hmm. I spent 20% of my time in India, but the bulk of it is in this country. And so I'm an Indian American as well. This is partly my story. Mm-hmm. So I feel it's something I know well.
Wonderful. And you also spent some time in London.
I did. I was in London for 7 years, and at that time I was the correspondent for NDTV.
Wonderful. So Meenakshi, coming back to your choice of people who have been featured in the book, what was the criteria for you to choose? You've chosen people from who have impacted the policy. You've chosen people in healthcare, the company people, the startup founders, the investors.
That's a very good question. Mm-hmm. So what I was looking for, there are a lot of wealthy and successful Indians everywhere, as we all know, and that was not my criteria. My criteria was, what are the areas where Indians have had a transformational impact on the industry that they're in, and who are the Indians that are transformational figures. So I narrowed it down to tech, medicine, and public policy, influencers in public policy. And I picked 5 people in each, and I could have picked a few more, but the reason I kept to 5 is that I wanted the readers to be able to really get to know these 5 people and to do them justice. And I focused in on them so that they, in their own words, could tell you how did they become so successful.
Yeah.
What were their obstacles? What inspired them? So in a way, this book is really also about success. How do you achieve success? Everyone wants to know. How do you become successful? Well, this book tells you how you become successful. If you want to know how to become successful, read the book. So because these are very inspiring stories.
Yeah. So Meenakshi, you talk about some very surprising facts about each of the people featured here. Tell us some of the top 3 favorite surprising facts or stories which come to your mind.
Well, I mean, it's not so much surprising, but let me explain what I mean by transformational. Because I call the book Indian Genius, and everyone questions what does genius mean, and in a way it also means the genius of the Indian people. It's not necessarily each individual being a genius, because that's a subjective term. Malcolm Gladwell has a theory about anyone can spend 10,000 hours and achieve the outliers and stuff. Or Angela Duckworth, the anthropologist, will say no, but you need passion as well. I think you need a combination of different things, but there's also the genius of the Jewish people, and the genius of the Italians, or the genius of, I've written about the genius of the Indians. And there's a special thing that Indians will recognize, which is called Jugaad. Yeah. So I've talked about that in the book, and several of the people mention it in the book. But amongst the people I have profiled, I do believe that several of them have that quality. And let's just take, for an example, someone like Atul Gawande. Atul Gawande, with the Checklist Manifesto, brought infection rates down in hospitals across the US. He brought it down by 60%. And that is transformational.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant idea, and it really transformed things. And so, he had an impact throughout the medical industry. And so he didn't have just one idea. Then he came up with another idea, being mortal. And this is about the care at the end of life. And Americans, there isn't a doctor who you meet who doesn't think that they can give you another procedure or another test and can't cure you. But he actually changed the way Americans think about the end of life care and this whole death with dignity. And so there was this another very transformational idea, certainly for Americans, and his book really had a major impact. And it's changed the way the industry thinks, given that 90% of the costs of medical care are spent in the last 2 years of a person's life. So these are people who are transformational thinkers, and they have a major impact on their industry. So I was looking for people like that. Let's take someone like Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
When I first came to this country, meditation and yoga was considered a hippie thing. Today, everybody's grandmother is studying yoga. Every single strip mall has a yoga place.
Yeah.
And that is because he, as a medical doctor and endocrinologist, who had studied at All India Institute, his father was a leading cardiologist in India who treated Mountbatten. His brother is currently at Harvard Medical School. He's a traditional doctor.
Yeah.
But Deepak gave it a sort of medical, he made it okay to practice alternative medicine. And if everyone is studying yoga and meditation today, even in prisons and in high schools, it's all thanks to Deepak Chopra. So he had a transformational impact too.
Yeah.
I think people like Satya Nadella, a very visionary. When the whole AI thing happened with OpenAI hitting the market and the destabilizing impact, Google sort of was in a nervous state about what it was going to do. And then Sam Altman got fired. Satya Nadella just stepped in and stabilized the market, and he offered to bring him to Microsoft. And then, of course, they had invested already way ahead of the game. He had invested in OpenAI ages ago. But Satya Nadella's always ahead of the curve on everything. And, he, at one point, it became the most valuable, Microsoft became the most valuable company on the planet. There was, NVIDIA and Apple, and they're in a three-way horse race all the time. And that wasn't the case after Bill Gates left. So I just really think these are visionary people. I think these are people who are transformational figures. So that gives you some idea of why I chose them.
Wonderful. And tell us about how they made this shift as an immigrant. What kind of battles did they fight? Take the Vinod Khosla. He has had a share of struggles being recognized as one of those early generations.
When you take a look at people like Kanwal Rekhi and Suhas Patel, who came in the early 60s, when immigration rules were first relaxed in 1965, they were not viewed as managers. They were not viewed as front office people. So they became inventors and founders. They started their own companies to circumvent that. So yes, they did have discrimination. They had glass ceilings that they had to push through. So these were very inspiring people. Fast forward 20 years later, or 3 decades forward, and Satya Nadella and Shantanu Narayan come, and by then these guys have established that Indians can run companies, and then it's much easier for these people to take over companies like Microsoft and Adobe, because the track record has been laid in a way. So, but even so, for an Indian to run Fortune 500 companies was still pretty amazing. I think that, Indra Nooyi started that. I think that, Indians have, what's remarkable about Indians is how they've done it in one generation. But the other thing that I hope that this book will do, which is every time I'm in India, and even here to a degree, I see Indian parents who are so wrapped up with pushing their kids to study for the JEE exam for IIT. They think that IIT is the only way to, achieve professional nirvana, and that that they have their heart set on their kids becoming engineers, and the parents are so heavily involved in what direction their children are taking, and I feel like almost every single one of these top achievers that I've profiled in my book did not, they said their parents gave them the freedom to choose their way. Their parents were not heavily involved in their choices. And, Satya Nadella and Shantanu Narayan did not get into IIT. Their older brothers were not in Satya's case, but in Shantanu's case, his older brother was a sort of high-achieving IIT type of guy. Even in Abraham's case, Abraham Verghese, the doctor, his older brother was a big IIT gold medal type of guy. That doesn't mean that they become sort of famous CEOs. So sometimes it requires people who are creative, people who are willing to take risk, and people who are willing to do other things with their life. So I hope that parents take a little bit of a lesson from this book as well.
That's a great message. I totally endorse it. I was just at RSA, and I was at a Palo Alto Networks event, and I saw what Nikesh has done with Palo Alto. His platform.
Nikesh is in the book.
I know.
I'm a big fan.
And I just feel that he also mentioned that in his interviews, that his parents gave him a lot of freedom.
Yes.
So I met him in person, so it's very
And
fresh.
he's a very thoughtful, actually, I find Nikesh an extremely philosophical, extremely thoughtful CEO. And
why do you say philosophical?
Read the book.
Okay.
His interview is actually quite philosophical. he really thinks he's very insightful. You know, he is big risk taker.
I think so. Yeah.
He has walked away
Yeah.
from big pay packages.
Mm.
You know, you have to have, and Vinod Khosla will tell you this,
Oh
that
my God.
all the people, one of the common denominators of all these people is the ability to take risk.
Yeah.
You have to be able to take risk. You just have to see Chandrika Tandon, Indra Nui's sister.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason Indra Nui is in the inside of the book, but her
On the
sister
cover.
is on the cover of the book.
The only woman here. Oh my God.
No, Nikki Haley's there too.
Oh, Nikki Haley. Okay.
And I mean, Chandrika's life story is absolutely remarkable. I mean, not to diminish what Indra Nui achieved, because you know, look, she completely pushed past the glass ceiling of an Indian woman being the head of a Fortune 500 company. So Indra Nui went to Boston Consulting, and then she went to Pepsi, and she rose up the ranks. And you know, look, all credit to her, she became CEO. Let's take Chandrika's career. So Chandrika went to IIM, went to Citibank in India, and in her 20s, she devised a risk-benefit sort of cost-benefit analysis that was so unusual and so brilliant that Citibank sends her to New York to teach everyone in New York how to do this. McKinsey then says, oh, we want to interview this person,
Yeah.
and brings her to New York for an interview.
Yeah.
Within a few years, she becomes partner at McKinsey, the first woman Indian South Asian partner. She then, her job is to restructure banks because she's a banking person, finance person. And she then decides after a few years, now most people would have thought, oh, I'm a partner at McKinsey, you know, I died and went to heaven and I can just like retire for the rest of my life. But she's, after a few years, said, you know, I can do this on my own. Now, this is the 80s when startups are not even a thing,
And
leave
women.
alone a woman and a
Yeah.
brown woman.
Yeah.
But she then leaves it and sets up on her own. And she's sitting in her accountant's office where she's rented some space, and she's thinking, oh my God, did I make a big mistake? And then her first client walks in the door from Fleet Street Bank, someone who she knew through her McKinsey connections. And then a whole line of people. She's so successful, a whole line of banks come walking, and she never looks back. I mean, it was a big risk to
Yeah.
leave McKinsey and the 80s,
Yeah.
and for an Indian woman, and she does it. And then by the time Indra Nui is becoming CEO, she said she has by then restructured all the banks, you know, like Chase and Fleet and Republic and the Bank of Brazil. She said she has made more money than God. She doesn't know. She said she's made so much money. She says, I am going to leave it all and I'm going to do what I really love, which is Carnatic music. Imagine
Oh my God. Oh my
a completely different sideways dive. And her first record is nominated for a Grammy.
God. Oh my God.
First record. And then this year, she was nominated again and she wins. She
Oh my
won the
God.
Grammy this year. So you tell me who's the genius.
She is.
So, I mean, you know, it's so pretty. I mean, someone who can achieve the top in any field she touches, no matter what she is, as diverse as music, to banking, to consulting. I mean, that's, to me, it's a no contest.
Yeah.
So, and then she's very philanthropic. She and her husband donated $100 million to NYU's engineering school, and it's now called the Tandon School of Engineering. She's very involved, and she's doing her music, and she's performing at Kennedy Center, Lincoln Center. Modi comes to Washington, and she's doing the convocation. Shri's calling her up to, you know, do his opening act. And she's still on the Stern School of Business board, and she's still doing her, you know, business stuff. So she's pretty amazing. So, I mean, she wears lots of different hats. So I think that, you know, now these geniuses, by the way, are tough people. They're not
They are
sort of
tough.
namby-pambies. I mean, the one person I did find was just a really saintly, compassionate human being was the Surgeon General. But really,
Surgeon General?
Vivek Murthy,
Oh,
the
Vivek
Surgeon
Murthy,
General.
yeah.
So he was
Yeah.
nominated not once but twice, both under Obama and under, I mean, and I could see why. He's a truly unbelievable human being.
He calls mental health issues a pandemic.
Yes, but
Who does that? Yeah.
he picked such unusual things to focus on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what was so transformative about him.
Yeah. No, this is incredible. Okay, I have a Kindle copy. I also have a hard copy. The only thing I need to do is
And there's an audible version.
Yes, there's an audible
for the
version.
people who don't like to read.
Yeah. No, this is incredible. Anything else you want to share with us, man? And the most fascinating thing about me is you're a journalist, and I am a bioengineer turned journalist turned author. So I have a lot of things I relate with you. The first thing is this book itself. I'm a huge fan. Tell us what your life was like a journalist.
Oh, well, I was very fortunate. I was grateful because it gave me opportunities. I had the great fortune to interview President Mandela just as he was becoming president of South Africa. That was really an amazing experience. I went to South Africa, and he was just the most amazing person to interview. And, Bill Clinton, I was on his press plane. I mean, it was just, I had some really wonderful experiences. And, I covered when Maggie Thatcher stepped down. Look, I'm old, I'm 71. So I've been around. But
oh my God, those are phenomenal, transformative moments in history.
Yeah, so there were, I was in Europe when the Berlin Wall came down. So there were some really wonderful moments to witness. And so, so I've been very fortunate.
So you're a person who follows your heart, or do you follow your head, or both?
No, I definitely don't follow my head. I wish I did more.
Thank you.
And I'm not a tech person, so I'm tech challenged being my age. I grew up in India with, as I was saying to someone today, with ration cards and without a TV. So
amazing. This has been a phenomenal conversation. To me personally, an eye-opener. A lot of things you reinforced, beliefs in me. I can understand the pain of an immigrant, a woman, and what you have done and what the geniuses in the book have done. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. By the way, she has a line of people waiting to get the copy signed. She left that and gave her valuable time to this podcast. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.